Um, Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar for the AOM International Management Division. Today, we'll talk for about 1 hour about this very important award, in my opinion, the most important award the entire division has, which is the Best Dissertation Award. Why I think it's so important? Because it is the award that recognizes and gives visibility to the future of what our international management division is all about. And we'll have the pleasure today to hear from the finalists for this award last year, as well as our year's winner, Nana from Ghana. I'm Joao Albino-Pimentel. I'm just starting as the chair for this Best Dissertation Award committee this year, taking over from Davina Vora, who did an amazing job. So I hope I'll keep up the good work. So what are we going to do today? So our agenda for today, I'll start by talking about the award and what the application process is. Then we will hear from our 2023 finalists in alphabetic order of first names. So first will be Alison Holm, who is currently at Nova, School of Business and Economics in Portugal, but got her PhD at Copenhagen Business School in Denmark. Then Nguyen, currently University of Sussex, but with a PhD from Finland, University of Vasa. And Nana from Ghana, currently at CEIBS or CEIBS, with a PhD from IESE, from Barcelona. So they will share some insights about their dissertations and how this award has hopefully made a change in their careers, or how did they get to be interested in international management. Then I will open for questions and answers. I hope some of the attendees are potential candidates for this award, or either this year or in the future. So we want to hear from you. Okay, so what is this award about? So to be eligible for the award, you have to have completed your dissertation in 2023 calendar year. So you have to have defended the dissertation by the end of December. That's the most important one. The second eligibility criterion is that the candidate needs to be a member of the IM division. If you're not a member of the division already, it's very easy to do so. You just need to go to the AOM website and register. If you already have 2 divisions you're a member of, you have to pay a $10 fee. But I think it's very worth that cost. The topic of the dissertation has to be consistent with the international management mission, which includes both very traditional international management topics, and these would be cross-border management and operations of multinational companies, a multi-country, multi-unit analysis of several sorts, but it could also be broader topics. So, for example, there are some students who may not identify themselves yet as international management scholars, but who are doing research in sustainability or organizational theory that has an international context or an international dimension to it. These are also eligible for this award. So these are topics that we would very much like to see trying to get this award. And finally, if you submit an application, you are also making some commitments. The first commitment is to present your dissertation at a special session we will have in Chicago during 2024 AOM meeting. And while in Chicago, you will also attend the business meeting of the IM division, where the winner will be announced. So not only we want you to share insights of your dissertation with other people at the AOM meeting, but we want you to be there to be recognized in front of everyone in the business meeting and get your award. in case you are selected. How does it work for you to apply? And I hope our finalists will give us more detail later on. So you need to submit first an abstract of your dissertation. This is a 10 pages document. It does not include the references, but all tables are in these 10 pages. It should be succinct, but it should include, for example, what is the topic of your dissertation, description of the objectives, the theoretical foundations of your dissertation, how it relates to prior work, either in international management or in the other fields where you identify yourself at the moment, but also revealing what is the international dimension of your work, the methodology, findings, limitations. So it's really an exercise of summarizing the work that maybe is 100, 200 pages in 10 pages that will really incite the curiousness of the committee members. You submit this by email to me. So here's my email address, joao.albino-pimentel@more.sc.edu. You should include only in the body of the email information about your name, university, dissertation chairs, year you graduated, etc., but not in the summary. The summary should be made anonymous because I'll share that with the committee that has to make a decision based only on the content of the summary, but not who wrote it. And write on the title of your email, AOM, IM Division Best Dissertation Award abstract. So that will help me organize this a little better. One thing you should understand is behind this application process, we are people, okay? So we will receive all these emails myself, and I'll have to organize these in bins and make sure the process goes smoothly. So please help me out there. Continuing with the process. Once we have all the abstracts, in February 2024, the committee members, and I should thank all of them, it's really hard work to do this. So we have an amazing committee with Anne Jacqueminet from Bocconi University, Katie Magelson from London Business School, Stuart Miller, who is now at Durham University, Shamin Prashantam from CEIBS, and Sebastian Reich from IESE. So we will all read all the abstracts that will be submitted and grade these abstracts according to several criteria and come up with a list of 3 to 5 finalists. I will then have to contact all these finalists and verify if they can meet the commitments that I described before. Can they attend the AOM meeting? Can they go to the business meeting to receive the award in case they are the winners? And once I do that, we will ask all the finalists to send their full dissertations for us to also assess these full dissertations. So you see, we decide on the finalists based on the abstracts, but then the actual winner will be decided upon based on the full dissertation. Once we have the full dissertations, again, the committee will read everything, and around March or April, we'll make a decision on a winner. So yes, we will know who the winner is in the end of April or May, but that will only be announced at the AOM meeting in Chicago. Okay, so this is what I had to tell you about the award. Of course, if there are remaining questions, we can discuss this in the end of the presentations. But now we are going to proceed with our finalists' presentations. As I said, first we'll have Alison Holm, then Nguyen, and then Nana from Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'll just start by sharing my screen. Yes, perfect. So thanks again. It's a true honor to be presenting my dissertation and the process of sort of PhD journey in the context of the AM Dissertation Award. My name is Alison Holm. I'm an assistant professor at Nova School of Business and Economics, and I did my PhD at CBS. Called in the thesis, the final thesis, the title of that thesis is Corrective Corporate Responses to Accusations of Misconduct. So what I'll be doing is I'll be presenting my dissertation briefly, and also sort of the journey of the PhD. And so I started this PhD journey after working for about 2 years at the OECD in a unit specialized on a specific international framework called the OECD Guidelines for Multinational Enterprises. And these guidelines were born in 1976, believe it or not, and they're basically a set of standards that were written by government towards multinational enterprises to tell them how to behave responsibly on different societal issues, including human rights, labor rights, environment, etc. And so I worked 2 years at the OECD on sort of reporting on the activities going on under these guidelines, specifically on a complaints mechanism associated to these guidelines, whereby anyone who thinks that a multinational enterprise has breached the guidelines can submit a complaint under this mechanism against the multinational enterprise, with the hope that the M&E will engage in some kind of dialogue. Now, this dialogue is voluntary, and so that's what makes it interesting, is that M&Es don't always engage in dialogue, and also the outcomes are not, there may not be any outcomes out of these dialogue. They're very uncertain. And so civil society actors have deplored that actually remedy remains rare at the outset of this mechanism. And this is how I started my journey of thinking, okay, so what gets these M&Es to actually engage in dialogue? What gets them to provide some form of remedy as an outcome of these dialogues on accusations of misconduct? Then I looked through the literature and realized that there's a lot of literature on corporate misconduct, but it's mostly focused on the effects of misconduct on firms, including multinational firms, with regard, for example, their reputation, their image, and how firms can actually recover from this legitimacy loss, how they can repair their image. There's much less attention to in the literature to conditions under which multinational firms actually engage in correcting behaviors towards stakeholders by providing, for example, remedy to victims. So by remedy, I mean any kind of outcome that would help repair the harm or somehow prevent future harm. And this constitutes a critical void in the international business setting, because there are many important cross-border business activities that impact society and that are not covered by any global hard legislation. So there's no courtroom that can actually handle issues linked to these cross-border activities that impact, for instance, human rights or labor rights. And so the overarching question in my dissertation is, what are the antecedents and outcomes of corrective corporate responses to civil society stakeholders' accusations of misconduct on societal issues? My thesis is made of 3 papers, and the first one, I study conditions that bring multinational enterprises to engage in voluntary dialogue with complainants on different sorts of issues, including human rights or related to environmental protection. And in this study, I use a QCA method, so qualitative comparative analysis. And this study is co-authored with my 2 supervisors. And what we find is that actually stakeholders don't necessarily need to be extremely powerful, as long as their issues have some kind of interesting aspects, such as an urgent, displaying urgency, or resonating with the firm. In the second study, I focus on the skills that are required for mediators once the multinational enterprise has actually engaged in dialogue to help civil society actors on the one hand and multinational enterprises on the other to achieve some sort of resolution on these accusations of misconduct. And I find that mediators need several skills. One is confidentiality management, one is impartiality, and they also are required to have certain process skills to help overcome the divergent interests and the antagonism between these two sets of stakeholders that are very different. And finally, my third study looks at the outcomes of these dialogues between multinational enterprises and stakeholders or civil society actors who have filed these complaints on the accusations. And what I found here in my dissertation was that a lot of these outcomes actually focus on future actions, so more related to preventing future harm than actually repairing harm from the past. And that is still interesting. So it shows some kind of power of this engagement. However, it doesn't really match the need for justice that certain civil society stakeholders are seeking for. All of this work has been done using the context that I described previously, so the context of complaints filed under the complaints mechanism attached to the OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises. So just so you know, there have been, at the time when I stopped my data collection, there were about 400 or so complaints submitted, but only half of them were accepted, and even fewer saw MNEs actually engage. However, these illustrations or these examples are very good illustrations of what can happen in sort of best case scenarios. I collected the data myself, so it's unique and original data that was collected throughout the PhD. I actually spent a lot of time doing that, mostly based on public documentation, including archived websites of stakeholders, corporate reports, but also complemented with some interviews and some on-site data collection. Overall, the dissertation contributes to the growing international business and human rights research by expanding knowledge on the mechanisms and the role that multinational enterprises play to provide remedy to victims of multinational corporations' misconduct in the absence of a global hard law enforcement on cross-border issues, in the absence of a global courtroom for handling such issues. So now, how did I choose this dissertation topic? First of all, I was generally interested in the area of corporate social responsibility. Not only was I sort of intellectually interested in that, but also sort of involved in it. So it's a topic that really matters to me, and I think that helped me drive also this PhD, focusing on a topic that really matters, that really speaks to me. I leveraged my background in international business. So I studied in the CEIBS program, which is an international management master's. I worked on, in my master thesis was written on international business. It later got published in Global Strategy Journal. So you see there's this connection to international business also in academia. And then the different people that I also knew from academia working in this area were people that were very appealing to me, both intellectually, but also, I have to say, in this community, also very, usually very nice and open and constructive people. So that's something that I actually found really interesting. And I thought it would be interesting to leverage my sort of expertise that I got from my previous experience working as a professional at the as a policy analyst at the OECD. When I got to know a setting that, even though it deserved a lot of attention, really didn't get a lot of attention. Many people knew about the UN Global Compact, both in academia and in practice. Very few people know about the OECD guidelines. For some strange reason, even though the OECD guidelines are one of the pillar set of standards that also influence the UN Global Compact. So I thought it deserved more attention. Now, I didn't have the research question right at the beginning of the thesis. I think nobody really starts and finishes with the same research question. Initially, I wanted to understand how multinational enterprises manage legitimacy in multiple contexts, given institutional complexity. Like looking more inside their internal mechanisms after they got accused of misconduct. And what happened was that I started approaching different multinational enterprises who had been accused of misconduct, and I only got very few responses. And the responses that I got, the positive responses that I got, were only from those multinational enterprises that sort of had the success stories. So who managed to resolve the accusation in a way that they managed to add even more positive image to their case. So I got interviews from Michelin, a French tire company, and from Heineken. And these two sets of interviews were very helpful for my research in the end. But they didn't help me sort of address the very first question that I wanted to. So I re-evaluated the focus based on what information I could get access to, and it turned out that there was a lot of information there on internet. So my work I use a lot of archival records that are public. And turns out that civil society actors are way more vocal and ready to speak to me than were multinational enterprises. So in the end, I also got a lot of information from different NGOs, trade unions, talking about the different accusations. And that sort of helped me forge my latest research question. This process was not at all a waste of time. As I said, I gained some qualitative information, but I also wrote a teaching case on the Michelin accusations of misconduct. So that was actually kind of cool. And well, getting the award, becoming a finalist for this award, obviously Nana is the award winner, has impacted me a lot. First of all, it's a great honor, but it gave me a lot of external validation. So motivation, sort of information that my topic and my research actually matters, not just for me, but also for some other members of the community. And this is very motivating for the longer run when we need to submit the papers and work through the publication process. And I think that's really the most impactful effect of becoming a finalist for this award. I also am very grateful for the interesting feedback and conversations that I had actually with scholars after the presentation, not only with my peers, the finalists and winner, but also with the different academics that were there, the different professors that were there in the audience, and that was very, very helpful. And it gave me a sense that my work seems to speak to this community. So I wrote here a community boost. So in this, I spent a lot of time during my PhD trying to figure out who my community is. And I have to say the international management community has always given me a lot of support and sort of been interested in my work. And so being a finalist for this award was sort of a confirmation that, yeah, it does fit in this community, which was really, really nice. Yes, that's it for me. That's it for my presentation. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Alison. This was great. I have to say, I was not a winner either. Also was a finalist in my year, and it's great validation. As you said, what we are doing is something that the community really appreciates. You recognize, people pay attention to you, so congratulations. And your Michelin case study It's very useful. I've been using it for a couple of years now and really liked it. I have some more specific questions, but I'll leave this to the end after we hear from the other two finalists. So now,
I'm glad to hear. Thank you.
Okay, so let me, and I also really interesting to listen to your presentation, Alison. A very engaging presentation. So let me share my screen. Do you see now the full screen? Can you confirm it, John?
yes,
You see the full
yes,
screen?
we can
Okay.
see.
Okay, so hi everyone. It has been a long time since my public defense last year. So I am so glad to have another chance today to present again my thesis. I would also like to thank Davina and also Joan today for giving me a big chance. So let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Nguyen. I'm currently a lecturer at the University of Sussex in the UK, and I have had my PhD at the University of Vaasa in Finland. And my thesis topic were about foreign investment, when I especially investigate the impact of institutional differences and the role of senior headquarter managers on the propensity of foreign investment. So I actually had a very similar motivation background, like back then when I started my PhD journey. Coming from a developing country, I have a chance to involve several local projects when the foreign companies ask us, like at the third party, to liquidating their factories. And after 2008, 2010s, the popularity that the MNEs divest their factories, especially from developing country and emerging markets, like increasing significantly. So with the current situation of the global economies, foreign investment is becoming just a business phenomenon. And so my very first basic question was, why MNEs divest their foreign subsidiary? So I had started my boring business journey with that naive questions. So with that questions in my mind, I started digging into Eastern literatures and reading relevant reviews to take stock of previous findings. And actually, foreign investment is not a very new topic. It started already since 1979 by Boydewin when he defined what is foreign investment. However, I found myself interested much in examining the conflict or the contradictory findings about the impact or the real impact of institutional differences, like the economics, political, and cultural differences. And I was also surprisingly recognized that there's a missing piece of managerial roles, like the senior headquarter manager who involved in all kinds of organizational decisions, including divestment decisions. So in this regard, I frame my research questions that relate to the impact of institutional differences and the senior headquarter manager. So the research questions were later divided into 3 sub-research questions and answered in 4 different essays. So that is my thesis structure. Okay, so we talk about institutional differences in IB. So we should talk about institutional theory. So elaborating on the institutional theory, I expected that institutional differences would increase the investment propensity. And then there's several explanations for the positive effect, like the uncertainties of local countries, local legitimacy, liability of foreigners, and so on. However, 2015, 2016, starting and encourage future research to widen our methods and admitted that being different can actually be very beneficial to the firms. And following studies have also provided empirical evidence for being different, in creating like innovations, arbitrary opportunities, and diversity. So having said that, the BOS lens is not really widely applied in IB literatures. So I'm trying, and I believe that adding the POS lens into institutional theory is possible and also significant. So I developed potential curved linear effects of the institutional differences on investment propensity. And I further delve into the mechanism of specific context, like the subsidiary characteristics on modifying the main impact of institutional difference. And again, as I identify, there's the mixing studies on the role of senior headquarter manager, the top, the most powerful actors in all kind of organizational decision. I also bring into my thesis the role of senior headquarter managers, and all together set my conceptual framework for my whole thesis. And I would not spend much time to discuss how I examine empirically my developing hypothesis, because it's really straightforward. I am a quantitative person, so all the things are really like basic and simple and straightforward. However, I would only want to mention that Finnish MNEs and their investment for the past 4 decades are my research context, and I apply frailty survival analysis in my main research methodologies. And the genetic issues are also discussed in my thesis. And the thesis provides several interesting findings, at least to me and to my supervisor as well. First, I saw that adding the POS lens to the institutional theory could explain the diverse effect of institutional difference. So it means that in previous study, we always assume that the impact of institutional difference can be representative by the impact of cultural difference, something like that. However, I found that depending on different dimensions of the institutional difference and also in specific situation of the firms, the impact of institutional difference would be really different. For instance, I found that cultural and economic difference have a U-shaped effect, while political difference is also considered at the, the formal institution, for example, always increase divestment propensity. More importantly, and also more empirically, I confirm that compared to the distant construct, which is developed by Cole and Shai in 1998, like very popular construct in IB literature, our proposed fission construct can actually provide a more consistent and also more accurate measurement to assess the real and specific impact of institutional differences. Another selling point of my thesis relates to the role of senior headquarter manager. To the best of my knowledge, my paper is among the first one examining the role of senior headquarter manager in making divestment decisions. And precisely, I found that global human social capital and also managerial cognitions, which are developed through previous experience, interaction, education, cultural background even, could enhance their managerial capability to later manage well with foreign subsidiary, leading to lower level of divestment in foreign countries. Okay, so this is pretty much about my thesis. I would also want to mention that some of my essays already published, so you could easily find my paper online. And if not, you can contact me if you have a similar interest to my thesis topic. Okay, so now I want to spend a few last minutes to discuss about the AM, the Dissertation Award. And I share exactly feeling with Alison before about how the award, the finalists really impact to my career. Having said that, instead of keep overlapping what her engaged presentation already told you guys, I think I want to share some tips for preparing for the proposal. The first thing, following the 10-base structure, really follow that. My past experience will be I submitted my 10.5 pages, and then Davina have contacted me and have to come to cut out the half page. It leads to the case that you don't have to include all interesting points in your proposal, because all the time you only need to include 1 or 2 selling stories, but to make sure that they make a strong connection to previous knowledge. And also remember that, to me, emphasizing theoretical contribution is really important. People say that having conceptual paper, case study enrich the theoretical contribution a lot, which is true. However, we are at the quantitative people, when we try to emphasize, we also provide some theoretical contribution. You need to prove it and prove it well in the proposal. Okay, and the last point is some personal tips. Some personal tips. Firstly, do not think too much about the award or about the nomination. I myself think a lot. I'm overthinking all the time. But because when you keep thinking about that, you will a lot of pressure going on. Just ignore it. But remember that this is actually a very good chance for you to socialize your interesting story, your thesis, right? So instead of overthinking about whether or not submitted it, just do it. Because the thesis is already published, and writing 10 pages for a PhD student, for a PhD, like with the degree, is really basic and simple and something possible for you to do it. So just do it. And then my last point, take care of yourself. I already mentioned about my missing chance to present my dissertation. It's really a regretful. So take care of yourself physically and emotionally to be there. That is, and that's all of my presentation. I hope that feel free to contact me if you have any further questions, either related to my boring topic and journey for doing my PhD or about the award. Thank you.
Thank you, Ha. There was nothing boring about it, and thank you very much for these final thoughts. They're very helpful and useful for all PhD students. Take care of yourselves. And I'm glad you now had the chance to leave your thoughts on international management here for the posterity. Very good. So let's move on with Nana from Ghana, the winner of last year's Best Dissertation Award.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. All right. So if you're wondering why Joao keeps calling me Nana from Ghana, it's because I actually prefer to be introduced that way. It's much easier than trying to actually pronounce my full name, which is a mouthful for many people. And it's because my name is Nana and I'm from Ghana, and it's easier to remember my name that way. So I got my PhD from ESA and I'm a lecturer at CEIBS, as Joao mentioned. So I'm going to talk about my dissertation, which I defended in June last year. It's called I Can't Change Who I Am, but I Can Control What I Do, 3 essays exploring cultural identity as a resource for navigating multinational work context in emerging economies. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it. If you want to, I'll give you my email address at the end, and I can send the dissertation to you to read, along with some Chinese tea, maybe to keep you awake. And I'm just going to give you the highlights and then talk about maybe things that I think that it would be useful for you to think about. So as hinted in the title, my dissertation is made up of 3 essays. And just to give you an idea of the kinds of work that are considered for the award, my work was 2 qualitative papers and then 1 conceptual paper, which was the middle one. And they explore the overarching research question: how do managers in emerging economies leverage identity resources to mitigate cultural differences with their collaborators? Why did I do this? Because it's interesting to me. I went into the PhD thinking I was going to be the one warrior who brought some focus back to some of the limelight on Africa and African issues, which I thought were very interesting, but were getting quite overlooked. I did get some pushback on that because people thought, emerging economies, it's hard to get data. Why don't you study Europe, or other places where there's a lot of data? But I just couldn't see myself doing the PhD. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been motivated enough. So I kind of stuck to it. And in the end, I got around the data limitation issue by doing qualitative work and ended up finding out that that's actually what resonates with me. I actually fought being a qualitative researcher very much because in ESA, as with many other schools, there's a bias toward quantitative research because it's easier to publish and so on. But I actually intended to do a qualitative essay, a conceptual paper, and then a quantitative one, just so I could have a taste of all of it. But I ended up doing all qualitative and then 1 conceptual paper. So the first essay, with yet another long title, is toward a framework of contextualized assets and liabilities. What it's basically about is the idea was to reconceptualize cultural identity as a tool that people use to connect with others when they work in multinational settings. in this particular paper, we saw being a local or being a foreigner as a certain attribute that gave people both advantages, which we call assets, and disadvantages, which we call liability. So those assets of localness and foreignness, and there were also liabilities of localness and foreignness. So we kind of came up with a framework for how those particular assets and liabilities shape companies' decisions to appoint leaders. And then we submitted it to the 12th volume of Advances in Global Leadership in 2019. And it won the award the following year for Outstanding Author Contribution, the Emerald Literati Awards. Submitting to this, so it's a chapter in a book, basically. The opportunity came to submit as while we're still collecting data, and the framework had begun to emerge. So I kind of decided to take the opportunistic route because I realized that if I worked toward the deadline, which was in early 2019, then it would kind of give me an impetus to get the work done. Because with qualitative research, you can go on and on and on. But I realized that if I could get this out and get it published, first of all, it would give me some motivation because at least you know you're done, you've truncated that process. And then I could move on to other things that I also wanted to explore. So we submitted to that outlet and it got accepted and then later I won the award. And then for the second paper, I did a conceptual paper. I'd always planned to do a conceptual paper in the PhD, even though again, I was told it was probably not going to be a good idea. Why? Because it takes a long time to get a conceptual paper finished. But there were a number of reasons. One, I wanted to get very deeply into the literature, particularly cultural identity and identity work, which was a new literature that I wanted to dabble in. And also for a more personal reason, I was pregnant at this time when I was starting the second paper. And I realized that I wouldn't really be able to collect data and have the strength to analyze it all the time and all that. But reading was something I could do almost any time. And I was naive enough to think that I could actually read papers while, taking care of a newborn. That didn't go as planned, but this did work out quite nicely for me because I didn't have to worry about collecting data and all of that. But on the other hand, it didn't make it easier because there was still a lot of back-end work to do in terms of theorizing and getting the paper together. So the product of this paper was a framework that tried to explain how people who are in contexts where they're interacting with foreigners or people who are not from their cultural context kind of switch their enactments between their own culture and others. So how people get to play with other cultures that they're exposed to. And as I said, I use identity work theory to conceptualize this. So I submitted it to the AIB conference in 2021. And I was blown away when it was selected as a finalist for the Best Theory Paper Award. I didn't even know that the award existed, but it got selected. So these are some of the good things that happen. So basically, I'm just encouraging you, if you are not already doing that, submit to conferences, you just never know. And I mean, you might think that your work is only interesting to you because again, I kind of had this complex thinking, it's emerging markets. Specifically, I was writing about Ghana and I thought nobody would care, but then this good thing happened. And of course, that gave me a boost. And on the other side of it, earlier this year, we submitted this paper to AMR and got roundly rejected. So that's just to let you know that there are highs and lows in this thing, right? So, but the good thing about getting rejected is we got some really good feedback. So my cherished theory of identity work, there was a bit of a problem with it. All the reviewers in common had a problem with the use of that theory, but they gave alternatives which actually would work very well. So that's on the back burner. It's going to be redeveloped and redeployed at some point in the future. And then for my third essay, I had just had a newborn. It was a few months down the line, and I needed to get back into the research because I wanted to, this was after COVID, right? I wanted to get back into getting my research going and finish this dissertation. So I was just really thinking about topics. And in the beginning, I was trying to force myself to come up with quantitative topics to do because I wanted really to cross the whole spectrum if I could. But as fate would have it, every single question I came up with was qualitative in nature. It was how and why. So at a point, I just had to embrace the tide and just say, this is who I am, right? Funny enough, I was talking about identity. So it kind of came with that. I had to embrace my research identity. I was just a qualitative person. That's what it was. So in the end, I also embraced another thing, which was an idea that had kept coming to me. It was about my own experience studying for my master's degree in the UK, and how even that short immersion, it was a 1-year program, forever changed how I saw myself as a Ghanaian professional and how we do work in Ghana, and the work culture, the work environment, and so on. So I decided, well, I mean, one resource that I have in abundance is a network of people who studied abroad and either came back or didn't come back. And there are tons of people like that in my country. So I thought, okay, let me just start interviewing them and see what comes up. So what emerged was this very complex framework that you see over there that kind of talks about the relationship that people have with their identity and with the work environment in the home country once they've been immersed for a short term. And why this work was kind of interesting was because normally in identity literature, when we talk about changes from immersive experiences, they look at the long term. So they look at expatriates who have been in a country for 3 to 5 years or above. Normally, if you just say, oh, I went for 1 year, nobody really thinks, there should be any serious impact on your identity. But we were able to come up with a theory that showed that, depending on the context behind the immersive experience, in this case, going from a developing country to an advanced context where there were very sharp cultural differences in terms of things like management of time and kind of the standards of work and so on, it did spark certain realizations and reflections in people's minds. So again, there was a special issue of GYBS that there was a call for papers for a special issue of GYBS. And again, I thought another way of bounding the work so that I'll work toward it. And so we submitted toward it and got roundly rejected. But again, we got very good feedback. And the good news about that is that we realized that there was just so many things emerging from the data. And I guess because of time, because we're trying to meet the deadline, and also because I was just so enthused about everything, that we just kind of made it a salad and presented everything in one framework, but it was way too complex. And so in simplifying it, and then with the idea of collecting further data, we're actually going to get 2, potentially 3 or 2.5 papers out of it. So it's actually turned out quite well. Now for applying, Alison and Ha have already given you the 411 on that. Basically, the call came, I saw it's in the AOM mailing list, and I already had all the material, right? In my school, we submit the dissertation as well as a summary of the dissertation. So I'm not sure if it was 10 pages, so I had to do some work to reduce it, but basically everything else was there. It doesn't take too much out of you. So I just made the submission and then went through the process, and then we got the confirmation email in March saying that we were finalists, and that already was a big deal. So we submitted the full dissertation and then presented at AOM. Now, in terms of winning, it was a huge shock because you heard Alison's work, for example, and the other finalists who was there, they presented their work, and I was thinking, wow, this is it, this is the Holy Grail. There's no way I'm going to win this. But I was already so excited to be there. But it was really nice to have been called, and I think it speaks to the variety of work that they really considered, right, for the award. Now, as Ha mentioned, and Alison as well, one of the key things that you get from the award is recognition. So globally, you get recognition because suddenly people know your name. No matter the school you went to or where you're from, people know your name suddenly, and even in international management circles, in this case, people that you've been citing suddenly pay attention and they recognize you. And also in the IM division, I think that one thing that's done is to draw me more into the IM division, because now I've got to meet so many cool people in the division and actually have engaging conversations with them. And even on LinkedIn as well, because it was also all over LinkedIn. I've got lots of requests from scholars, senior academics, and so on. That's really cool. And I think another thing that was really neat was that my informants, many of them are on LinkedIn, and we ended up getting connected. Many of them saw that the dissertation they had contributed to won an award. And so I feel that it makes it easier for me to go back to them to do follow-up interviews and so on, because they know that I'm doing good stuff with their data. And collaboration opportunities have also come up because people, it gave me so much a good platform to showcase my work. And so people come up to you and say, hey, I think you're doing this is really interesting. I'm doing this as well. What do you think? Can we do some work together? And there are currently a few projects that I'm discussing with some people. And then also for the institution that you get your PhD from, as well as the institution where you work, it does give them a good profile, and they're very appreciative of it. In terms of legitimacy, I feel that even though I'm very, very junior in my institution right now, many of my colleagues now, they obviously share their warm wishes on my winning the award, but you get the sense that they get some more confidence in your abilities as a researcher. They realize, oh, she does some good work, even without my having published, as I hope to in the next few years. And hopefully it should be good for my promotion packets as well, because this is the sort of thing that will be on your CV when your name comes up for tenure considerations. And also affirmation plus motivation. This is exactly what Haja said, that for me, by the time a dissertation was over, I did not want to see the words cultural or identity ever again. I was so sick of the work. I just spent too many years, too much time, too much passion on this thing. And after winning the award, all that just sort of disappeared, because suddenly I was thinking, oh, wow, actually, there's this interesting thing that happens. By the time you finish a PhD, you begin to wonder if it was all in your head. Did I really write sensible stuff, or was I just way too into this thing? But when getting selected as a finalist and winning such an award just kind of confirms to you that, oh, actually, I did write some good stuff. Okay, so maybe it's worth working on and publishing it. So it's really a good boost for that. So after the heavy hitting stuff, if there are things that I want you to take away from this, starting from your dissertation, right? Hone your hunches. So if you see from the story that I shared, many of the ideas that I came up with, I wasn't sure of them, but I had this really strong feeling that, this would be interesting. And of course, with the guidance of my advisor and just kind of really crafting the academic voice that was somewhere in there and trying to make it come out and be strong, I think I managed to do work that has been assessed as good. So I'm just encouraging you, if you have some ideas out there, and don't doubt yourself. The worst you can do is come up with the worst you can do is come up with some work that you'll have to redo or rework in some way with some new theory or something else. But don't let your self-doubts stifle your academic voice. Yeah. And the second thing, just to really echo what Ha said, is have a life, right? Faith, family, friends, food, fitness, all of them start with F's, interestingly. And as the infographic says, it's not an easy thing to do, balancing everything. So I ended up having my 2 kids during the PhD. It took me an extra year, and through COVID as well. But I wouldn't change it for the world. It wasn't an easy thing to do, but it's not impossible, right? And just to let you know that if there's stuff in your life that's important to you, craft that, develop that along with your dissertation, because the dissertation will end. But the question is, well, what's the life you want after the dissertation ends, right? And then the last thing is hold loosely, right? Both your wins and your losses, because as you can see, there are highs and there are lows. You get an award here, you get a rejection there, another award here, you're a finalist here. So yeah, don't take your wins and your losses too seriously. Celebrate your wins, cry over your losses, but maybe give yourself like a 30-minute limit or something like that. Don't do more than that, because other wins will come. And the last thing is, because just like Ha said, hope, because what have you got to lose, right? Just apply, you never know. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, you can always contact me, beyond this session. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Nana. This was great. You saved me a lot of work. So guys, apply. I have one comment. It is true that being a finalist for this award makes your name more recognizable. But let's not ignore that she's Nana from Ghana. That makes it much easier as well. But anyway, so just we do have a few minutes for questions, but I want to comment that I'm amazed with the range of topics that our finalists have covered, going from very traditional international management topics to a concentration new phenomena that our world needs to address today. But also the 3 finalists today, they all have done conceptual work, qualitative work, quantitative work, QCA, that is somehow in the middle of quantitative and qualitative. So don't let your research design, the approach you have for research, deter you from applying for the award. We have here validation that all types of research will be considered. And if the quality of your research is up to the task, you may be a finalist. You may even become the winner of this award. So applying does not cost you a thing. It actually costs me and the committee some time reading. So the more people apply, the more time we spend reading all your abstracts, but I'm willing to do that. So please apply. We do have 4 minutes. If anyone has urgent questions, please let me know. I see here Yuli has asked us if we have any preference for work building on traditional IB theories or applying traditional theories for new phenomena. No. So we want something that can be consistent with what the mission of the International Management Division is, but the focus is high quality work that we think will be able to contribute to the future of international management research. I think Sony has raised her hand, so please.
Yeah, being respectful of time, I have a very quick comment on the question. So some time ago, I met Arthur Lee. He won the award in 2022, and he was like, the curse of the award is that you don't get published. So then he was like, you know, the best thing is publish and then compete for the award. And then obviously that doesn't happen. So Nana just seems to confirm Arthur's conjecture. But on a more serious note, I have a question, which is to do something with both Ha mentioned and Nana also mentioned, which was about collecting data. So the data that I collected for my dissertation was years into making. It took me like literally 8 hours of a minimum for like 3 years. It is in the automobile industry, but there's a huge bias towards developed economies. And so that data I got in like the first year of my PhD, but the rest of it took me like the rest of my PhD to get that data. So how do you basically you know, highlight or bring to light all the incredible work that years and years of work that goes into data collection? And do you have any tips for that?
Sorry, the question for me?
The question is to any of the finalists or even me,
Okay.
but I will let you guys go first.
So actually, I do also need to collect data for senior headquarter manager. For my, actually, I started doing that on my second years, and it's true because for the senior headquarter manager, I don't have, like, if you go with Orbis database, Thomson's Grant or Bloomberg, none of them really report information about senior headquarter manager. So what I'm doing is I contact to the company, so sending them questionnaire asking about. And I'm tracking also the financial statement for 10 years, and I collect it manually alone. And you're right, like we're suffering 8 years, like 8 hours. In my case, I spend almost 10 hours per day, including weekend to do it. But that is the beauty of doing the business thing, because you are the first one to do it, right? So nobody knows what to be the future. So actually, my tip would be always try to manage time well, because by the time you do your collecting database, you need to make sure that you also have other projects, for in my case, other XA going on. And I tell you one more thing. When I'm collecting my database for the senior headquarter manager, one of my co-authors said that for another paper, saying that it may be wasteful, like you should not do it. Because the best thing, I mean, the most important thing, you get paper published. So why don't you just focusing on secondary database? Again, I have a quantitative background. I'm good at econometrics, so I'm not daring to do conceptual paper or qualitative case study. So I only do quantitative, right? however, so by the time when I'm suffering about collecting database, I was so wondering if the final finding will be like significant or reliable or interesting. But the paper actually also won an award for the best like PhD paper at the conference at IAB as well. So you see that, I mean, you're suffering a lot, but like you get some good outcome as well. The paper is not public, yes, unfortunately. Maybe the curse that Arthur mentioned before it also applies to me. But I believe that as long as we do something well, we will get the best outcome later. But feel free to contact me again if you need more discussion about data collection.
Let me.
Oh, I'm done with collection, but like, how do you sell that?
Yeah, let me share some thoughts with you, also respecting the time. I would say, similar to how I would evaluate these abstracts, the most important in selling is a consistency between your research question, the data you collected, and how the uniqueness of this data will make it possible for you to better address the research question that you identified in the literature. And that also has implications for your choice of methodology. So as I said, qualitative, QCA, quantitative research methodologies, they'll be better fitting for different research questions, right? So Nana very well put forward all her questions of interest are about why, about processes of things. So qualitative research was quite good fit for that, and other types of questions will require different methodologies. Same goes with the data. I assume that you spend so much time, so much effort and resources collecting this data. It's because you and the people advising you believe the uniqueness of this data will make it possible for you to address an important research question. So I would highlight that in how I tell the story, not only the story on how you motivate the research question, but how your research, for its uniqueness on both in the front end and the back end of it, make you put you in a unique position to address that question. Okay. I mean, I hope this is helpful. Of course, I'm also open. My email is there, is in the call for applications. Anyone can send me an email with questions or with your applications. I hope we will receive so many applications that we really can identify the precious stones that we have in international management worldwide. Thank you, everyone, for attending this session. Thank you, finalists, for being here today. You did an amazing job and just reconfirms that Davina Vore and her committee has made a very good decision selecting